Welcome back to Trail Talk. I'm your host, Aaron Shimmons. Thanks for coming back to our Global Ultra Trail Show. This episode, we're wrapping up our GPT interviews, this time with Nicole Paton, who was second in the race, first Australian, winning the Australian 100 Mile Championship along the way. A great athlete, has represented her country twice. We talk about her history as a runner, some background to Nicole, some of those experiences racing abroad and racing here in Australia. And then we get into the meat of the episode with the GPT100 on a blow-by-blow account of how that just over a day unfolded for her. Before we get there, we've got to thank our sponsors, Tantrums, Trail Talk 15 for 15% discount, which is the highest discount you will find anywhere for Tantrums. We thank Tantrums for that. Also, X Miles for global nutrition needs. Use the link in the bio, link in the description for a discount there. And also Goreware. I run over mountains 30 for 30% off globally. Some great kit over at Goreware. I use it on my bike, use it on the trails, love the half tights, love the socks, love the concurve jacket. So check all that stuff out. But without any further delay, let's roll the interview with Nicole. Nicole Paton, welcome to Trail Talk. I'm going to start off by congratulating you on your amazing second place at the GPT100 Miler in a time of 29:12, I think, was the result. A competitive field, an interesting day out there. How are you feeling? Let's start off with that.
Thanks very much, Aaron. I'm feeling like a lot better now than I was probably during the race and even after it. Yeah, the recovery is coming along well. It was a tough time out there, as I'm sure you know.
And what are the things you've been thinking of or dealing with since the race? Aches and pains and general fatigue.
Yeah, I had like a lot of foot pain initially, but just the soles of the feet, just from being on them for so long. I was finding it very painful just to go to the bathroom or whatever in the first sort of 24 hours afterwards. But other than that, my feet were really great. Like there was from a ballista perspective and all of that. So I was really pleased with how they pulled up. Yeah, so the feet were a bit sore, and I was actually surprised I didn't have as bad DOMs as I would have expected, because I'm normally racing in a little bit shorter, not short by any means, but normally like 60 to 100K. And I do focus on the mountain stuff. So I'm like bombing descents normally and all of that. Whereas this, just that little less pace and not having the 800 to 1,000 meter descents, I think I was spared the worst of the DOMs. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the body is pulled up actually.
I think I was more like muscularly, like quads and calves. I think they were more sore during the race than actually afterwards. It was just the feet that were sore afterwards for me.
Yeah, absolutely. My quads were just shot the last 21Ks, like all of those stairs coming in towards Dunkeld. I was just like hobbling down those stairs. And that is when like Manny got away from me. And prior to that, she was sort of within reaching distance. And I just had nothing left. And it was the quads. It was absolutely, the quads were just done. And I've never experienced that before myself, that the quads were so painful.
Well, let's get into GPT after we've got through a list of other questions that I've prepared, because we haven't really met. So this is a great introduction for me, but also for the Trail Talk audience. So, why don't we start off with just introducing who you are, where you are located in Australia, and then we'll get into a little bit of your personal background with running.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Nicole Paton. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. However, I also spend a lot of time in the Alpine region around Mount Hotham, Harryville, that type of area. So I spend quite a lot of time at Mount Hotham, actually heading up there this afternoon. So yeah, in Victoria, in Australia.
And what about running? Like, how long have you been running? What's your history even with sports?
Sure. Yeah. So, I did do some running in school, cross country and track in the sort of like 400 to 3K space, mostly 800 and 1500, that type of thing. So I guess you could say I like had some degree of natural talent as a runner as a child. It's not something I pursued particularly seriously, and I pretty much just stopped that when I finished school. So then I came back to running sort of very recreationally, just to like keep fit and be a little social in my late 20s. And then I didn't really come to racing and ultra trail until my early 30s. So I was a bit of a late joiner, and I sort of do lament that a little bit now because I'm a bit of an older athlete. I'm sort of like, oh, I wish I didn't like waste those 10 years kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah, but
that's
I actually don't think that the generations of ultra trailers and trail runners that exist now, they didn't come from, they ran as a kid, they ran through their teens and their 20s, and now they're running ultras. So many have started at some point in their 30s. It's only now, like in recent years, that we're seeing people like George Knight come through, who is, young and running ultras. So I think you're fitting more into the typical norms of what I would know.
Yeah, that is true. But we are, as you said, we're seeing like George and Bridie, we're seeing like some young guns coming up, which is cool to see. And I'm sort of like, oh gosh, when I was, 21, I was drinking and partying. Different priorities, I suppose, but it's great for them.
Yeah, 21. Yeah, I know that I definitely didn't like running at 21, and it was probably another 3 or 4, 5 years even before I was getting into hiking. So yeah, maybe I was a late bloomer in that sense too. But what would you consider your sort of strengths as a runner?
Definitely, I'm like really like the more mountainous and like technical courses. That's really is my strength. I'm actually not a great like runner. Running isn't my strength, so particularly runnable courses are not really playing to my strength. So yeah, I really like stuff that is mountainous enough. It involves like a substantial portion of hiking and technical descending, that type of thing, because that's sort of a leveler with my running not being my strength.
So whenever you were getting back into running, let's call it, when did you transition or start thinking about trail and then also ultra? What was the motivations for mountain running, and was there any sort of inspiration or mentors that helped that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely like a defining moment in my life when I switched. So I was just doing like a little bit of like recreational road running, like did a half marathon, did a road marathon, sort of that thing. But then I had some time off with an inflammatory arthritis in my knee, and I got that fixed so that I could go on my honeymoon to Everest Base Camp, which was trekking. So I was always like a lover of the mountains and loved hiking. And as I said, spent a lot of time snowboarding and all of that at Mount Hotham. So yeah, we decided to go to Nepal for our honeymoon, and I really like thoroughly enjoyed the trekking in Nepal. And while we were there, I would see all these like trail runners in the shops, like the shoes. And then I saw trail runners as in people. I met them while we were watching the sunset over Mount Everest from Kalapata. They were telling me about how there's a race from like base camp to Lukla and it's 60 Ks. I was like fascinated. I was like really inspired. Like, wow, you can like run in these mountains. And so, yeah, I pretty much came back home to Australia after that, and went and bought my very first pair of trail runners and like entered a race 3 months later, which was the Razorback, because it was my local sort of trail up near Mount Hotham, the Razorback Run. And so I don't know, got inspired to try this mountain running thing because I met mountain runners in Nepal. And yeah, turns out it was just great for me.
It's funny how so many people can relate it to this one moment like that, where you just happen to stumble across people doing it or people that were runners and told you a story. It's so
Yeah.
cool how those things it's like passing it on to somebody else, and then you will in the last 10, 15 years, etc., have inspired others as well. So you've passed that on to other people that didn't know about trail running. So I just think it's cool how it goes full circle like that.
Yeah, it is. It is really great. And I do know of a few people that like I have inspired. So that's always a nice feeling. I hope there's others and continue to inspire others.
Yeah. So I had a bit of a nosy on your Strava, and not. I would whenever I looked at it, I thought, oh yeah, that graph can't be telling much of a story here. There must be some Strava dark ninja work going on. How much of your training is on Strava, and how much of it's not? And when are you making that decision for it to be public?
I have to tell you the truth, it's pretty much all on there. It has been really uh, not where I wanted it to be. I had a bone stress in my femur after UTA. And so it was, yeah, like there was like 6 weeks completely off running and a few other things. So it has been like all over the place, like up, down. Since then, I really only managed like a fairly solid block when I was in Europe for 6 weeks ahead of Worlds. And that's the only like consistent patch there. But the Ks look really low because I had the injury and I was just coming back. I was really focusing on time on feet and I was doing really hard, like a lot of vert and a lot of technical trails in the Dolomites and that. So it was like I was getting up like 15, 16 hours on feet for the week, but it was still like, 90K or something. It wasn't a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
K.
we can't look at Ks. I think I saw one week, and it was one of the better spikes, if we can call it that. But I think it was 80 something Ks. But there was nearly
Yeah.
6,000 meters of vert in there. So, you know that takes time.
Yeah, so that's really much yeah, so my Strava does not reflect a great consistency in the last few months and I am actually like really surprised I'm running as well as I am given I haven't been training in the optimum fashion. But yeah, I the work I did in Europe seemed to pan out really well even though I hadn't done any speed work or anything like that.
Do you do much cross training? Like, are you working on the bike or any other like gym work?
Yeah, so I do quite a bit of cross training in the gym. I do like HIIT classes and then just your strength training. I really only go on the bike if I'm injured or if I have if I'm just trying to do like a light recovery ride. I wouldn't say the bike is like a key part of my training. It's really sort of just something I do occasionally. The vast amount of my cross training is, well, when I'm in Melbourne, it's hit in the gym. And then when I'm like away, like up in the mountains and stuff, I do all sorts of things like backcountry skiing and stuff like that. So it's still like a time on feet thing, cross
So,
training.
as someone that loves technical mountain terrain and training and racing there, whenever you're in the city, what are you doing to prepare for that? Or is there like a yin and a yang to each week's training?
Yeah, so when I am really focused on training for a race like GPT or any other really technical race, I try to get out on the trails twice a week, if not 3 times, but I really try to hit like the technical trails. So I'm fortunate that I sort of work for myself and it can be quite flexible. So I usually go out on like a Wednesday. I might go out to Lerderderg and try and do like a technical midweek long run out there and also running in the Dandenongs. So it's like it's about an hour and 10-minute drive for me to go out to Lerderderg and it's less to go to the Dandenongs. Maybe like it depends on the day, but somewhere between 40 and 50 minutes for me to go to where I can run technical trails in the Dandenongs. So yeah, I just make sure that I'm hitting those twice a week.
Looking back at your ultra history again, the first race that I can see online was the Alpine Challenge 100K in 2016. What were you doing trail running prior to 16, and what made you, because obviously there's having an interest in mountains, having an interest in running, but then when do you go from, yeah, that 20, 30K to, oh, I'm going to do 100K. I fancy being out here for 12, 14 hours or whatever it is. Like, when do you make that step?
So my like progression was actually mostly all in 2016. So I had done some shorter trail races. I'd done a couple of adventure races, but they might have had like a half marathon of running in them. And I had done the 2 bays 28 prior to 2016, what I would call very slowly now. And in road shoes, I didn't even own trail shoes. But then from 2016 is when I started focusing on the trail running. So I started right from the start of the year with training on the trail running. And then my first race was in March. So it was a progression just throughout 2016 from my first race, which was a K race, up to that K at the end of 2016. And I chose the Alpine Challenge because, again, it's a very mountainous sort of race that excited me. It was quite hard for a first 100K, but yeah, it's a wonderful course. So a really nice course.
That Alpine Challenge race, is it still 100K or because there's a 100-mile event
There's
as well,
100
isn't there?
miles. Yeah. Yeah, there's 100 miles as well. And that's a great 100-mile course. And I would love to do it sometime. I've run the 100K and it's been run on its usual course. And it's also been run, there was a bushfire once on one portion of it. So it got run on the other 100K of the 100 milers. So I've run the entire 100-miler course, but only ever 100K at each time. So yeah, I would like to do the full 100-mile course as 100 miles at some point, but I'm not sure when I can fit it in.
Yeah, I think that's the original Australian hard rock qualifier as well, that course.
Yes. Yes, it was.
You followed up the Alpine Challenge with a journey of, I think, 3 runs at UTA 100K, starting in 2017. So you've gone back there a couple of times since. Like, whenever you ran it in 17, your time over the 8 years hasn't changed much. I mean, it's trending faster. Talk a little bit about UTA and like the journey and the progression, getting your time down to, I think now your PR is 12:13 on that course.
So it's been a different course all 3 times I've run it, so I don't really focus on comparing the times too much. So in 2017, it was quite a modified course. We didn't go down Kadumba at all. There was an out and back section. It was still had vert, but I think it lost a bit of vert as a result. So yeah, at that time, I think I ran around 30, and I was very happy with that at the time. It was quite a strong field that year. I think like I was 10th. It was a very strong field. Like there were a lot of very strong ladies in that top field, and so I was very happy with that result at the time. Between then and the next 2 attempts, I actually had 2 kids, so that's why there was a bit of a gap in UTA between then and I think then I ran it again in 2024. So yeah, there was a bit of a UTA gap there. So I had a couple of kids. Obviously, there was COVID and everything going. There's a lot going on in that gap.
A lot of
So
life happened
then,
there.
yeah, a lot of life. Coming into 2024, I had a really great training block ahead of UTA. I felt like I was running like the best I'd ever run, probably the best I have ever run. Especially from a running perspective, because as I said, running isn't so much my strength, but UTA is quite a runnable course. So I was training running and stairs, not like so much the technical in that. And so, yeah, I felt like I was running really well. I actually ran like a 5K PB because I've never focused on 5K. I've never done 5K. I ran a 5K PB at a park run a day after like a 35K long run. So that is my 5K PB, which is hilarious because it was the day after a 35K long run at the end of like the peak week of training for UTA. So I felt
Yeah,
like
you
I
must
was
feel
running.
like I'm ready here. Whenever
Yeah,
that happens, that's a good feeling.
I was feeling like I was running really well. And I think that year, the course was only slightly modified. We had to come up the Golden Stairs. And so we didn't go down the Golden Stairs the full way. There was some modification there and it took out a little bit of vert. And I ran 11:38, which is my fastest time. And then this year, I'm getting my years mixed up. This year was the first time I've run the like complete official course, although they have changed the start now from what it was back in 2017. You used to descend quite near the start, but I think it was too much bottlenecks. So yeah, this year it was the same course as last year, but we descended the full extent of the Golden Stairs. So it added about half an hour between like the aquatic center and sorry, I can't remember that. Is it Fairmont? Yeah. Between the aquatic center and Fairmont, probably added about half an hour to my time anyway. And then my overall time wasn't quite as good, I think, because I just didn't have a great day. I was 10 minutes slower to the aquatic center. So first half was sort of 10 or 15 minutes slower. And yeah, I wasn't, so I think I did run like 12, 13 or something. So yeah, it just wasn't quite as good a day for me. I was pleased with the result. I came sixth. I got another ticket to CCC, but it wasn't probably my strongest run.
Yeah, and UTI is such a runnable course. It's similar to in the sense that GPT, I was hearing from everyone, oh, it's such a technical course, but you need to experience it yourself because you're comparing it to what you've seen as runnable, what you've seen as technical. But whenever I have run in the Blue Mountains, it feels like just so much running and then
Yes.
stairs. And then lots more
Yes.
running and then stairs. And even the stuff that is climbing, it's like runnable climbing. You'd need to be able to be a strong runner to do well at UTI.
Yeah, totally, totally. It's very fast for the amount of vert in that course.
And like switching on to CCC, you ran that in 2019, 19 hours, 15 minutes. That was your first Euro race from what I could see. Talk a little bit about how you found the UTMB experience. 2019, that was the year that Pau Capel gunned it from the start at UTMB, and ever since then, that's been the form book for that race. What was the UTMB experience like and CCC?
Right. So this one's an interesting story. I
Bring
actually,
it on.
said
That's
I
what
had
we're here for, the
two.
interesting stories.
I said I had two children between like 2017 and the coming back. So I had my first child in 2019. And I had qualified for CCC. It was slightly different qualification system, but with the ranking from the 2017 UTA and the Alpine Challenge, a few other things, I'd qualified for the elite entry for CCC prior to falling pregnant. And they did not have pregnancy deferral or any of those things back then. And so I just decided I was going. I thought I'm planning to have a second child. I'm having kids now. I won't be able to train as much. I thought I'll never qualify again. And so I thought I'm just going to go and like try and finish this, you know. And so it certainly wasn't me racing. I was actually breastfeeding my daughter like in the aid stations. She was 7 months old. And it was just trying to finish, trying to finish. So yeah, I'm planning to go back to CCC again, like in 2026. Unfortunately, couldn't run it this year. I was entered, but with the Worlds, we had to choose between CCC or Worlds. So I'm going to go back in 2026, and I hope to get around in a lot less than 19 hours.
Yeah, I thought 19 hours was a bit slow based on some of your other results. So no, it's good to hear the story behind that. Yeah, so you're gonna go back there next year for another crack at it. How did you find the course? Like you've at least got to experience that course, which hasn't. I mean, since 2019. Maybe the first climb is different, but the rest of it's maybe a little bit at the end, but it's mostly all the same.
Yeah, so I did enjoy the course. It's a lot of vertical, but I think it's like not super technical from my memory anyway. So yeah, I really liked the course, and I'm excited to try it again. I don't think it's changed too much from my knowledge. It's a beautiful course. Like that Courmayeur side and everything is really lovely.
Yeah, it's a great course, and as you say, like that first part is maybe one of the most picturesque parts of the whole Mont Blanc Loop. You've represented Australia twice at the World Championships, Australia or Austria, and the Pyrenees. What was that experience like?
That was really, really great. For Austria, I was quite surprised to be selected because I had not long come back from having my son. So, um, that was my second child. So didn't have like a massive resume, but I had a couple of good wins in like local races here in Victoria. So I just submitted that, and they did put me in. They took quite a large team to Austria. I was really just absolutely thrilled to be selected, and it was my first time representing Australia, so super big honor. And I went over there with very little expectations. I had a really great training block leading into it. Like I really knuckled down and trained for the first time since I'd had my son, and everything went to plan. Like I had no injuries, no niggles. It was a great training block. So it was probably my second best training block, like that one I mentioned about UTA. So I was feeling pretty strong, but I thought all that was going to achieve me was like coming, hundreds or something, because like it's the world. So I didn't have high expectations, but I was, yeah, just out there to do my best. And I was really pleasantly surprised with like how I ran and how I placed and everything was like a huge surprise. And I was really happy with that. That was in Austria. So I ended up being the highest placed Australian female in the long course. Well, I think it was the highest placed of either gender in the long course that year. And yeah, so I pretty much was thrilled with that result, and quite a number of the girls did get cut off, unfortunately, which, the cutoffs at Worlds are painfully tight for women. Like, really, they are. Like, these people are not slow runners, and the cutoffs are, like, really tough. Every year, people get cut off that are, otherwise winning races, winning their local races and stuff. So it's
Yeah,
different
that's
standards.
that's got to be actually a difficult thing to get your head around, for people in the field, because as you said, these are the best representatives from every nation. And, like throw me into that field and I'm at the back of it. Do you know what I mean? So like it has to be like a difficult one. Like I can't imagine that's got to be hard to get the head around. How would you compare Austria and then the most recent one in the Pyrenees? What was that, the differences like?
Yeah, so the difference was there was a lot of difference in, I suppose, my confidence. I'd done another 2 years of training. I'd done a lot of races to qualify to be selected for that team. And so, yeah, I felt a lot stronger. Also, in between the two, I did actually go to the Skyrunning World Championships, which was also in Spain. That was the year prior in 2024. And I had done very well at the Skyrunning World Championships. I was 14th. So, that's a smaller field, so it's not quite the same. You can't compare the places with each one, but it was, yeah, had a great run there. I was very happy with it. So I was feeling confident about the Spain course. It was in a slightly different area of Spain, but still a similar like Viverti technical course. So I was feeling confident about the course being something that would play to my strengths and something that I could really like knuckle down and crush. Then I got injured in the lead up. So I did everything right to qualify and be selected, and I was selected, and all that was going to plan. And then I was injured. So that was very stressful.
You're talking my sort of stuff whenever you start talking about skyrunning, because I mean, I think being good at skyrunning and relishing that type of terrain is the perfect base foundation for technical ultra trail. It's essentially, whenever you run something like, things like the long trail in the Pyrenees, if you think what would be the short trail equivalent of this, it's more like skyrunning than anything else.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So moving on to GPT, was that your first miler?
Yes, that was my first miler. I have really focused on the like 100K distance. I've done many 100Ks. I always thought that a miler was just a little too long for me. Like, as in, I knew I could finish one. I knew I'd make the distance. I just thought like I wouldn't maybe enjoy it enough. And so for a long time, I didn't want to do a miler. But then the GPT came along and it's such an exciting course. Like, it's point to point, and I started to get so strong in the like 80 to 100K space that I was really like racing them. So I thought, oh, I could probably try a miler now.
And thinking about finishing times, like what was your longest race in terms of time prior to GPT?
Well, it would have been that CCC, which was 19 hours and 15 minutes. And I had also done Oscar's Hut to Hut with some like lightning hold, which so had resulted in a similar sort of time out for Oscar's Hut to Hut as well. So I'd done sort of around the 1915 a couple of times before. So I knew I could do 20 hours, no problems. But yeah, GPT it takes a bit longer than that,
Yeah. And
unless you count.
what did you think was possible going into GPT? Like, what were you thinking? Here's my goal time range that I think I can hit.
Yeah, look, my A goal was 28 hours, and I that was where I sort of started, and then I'd done pacing for 30 hours and 32 hours if things weren't going so well. And so, yeah, I finished in 29:12, I think it was, which considering I actually did not have a very good day, I'm really happy with that. I'm quite confident that, like, if everything had gone a bit more to plan, that I could get that 28 hours. But, it's easy to say. It's harder to do, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I'm going to get into the blow by blow and get through this course in a couple of minutes, but did you go out to Gary Word and train in the Grampians? Like, what did training look like that was specific for GPT? I know you had like an abbreviated block, but did you
Yeah.
have experience of the course?
Yes. So I did not run in the Grampians right prior to this race, but I have run in the Grampians because I do live nearby. I've run the Wonderland Run, all different distances at the Wonderland Run over the years. And I have also run the northern section. So the section from Mount Zero to Halls Gap a couple of times in training, just because I've been out there camping or with friends or whatever. I've just done a training run there. I've also been down to Dunkeld End for the Peaks and Trails event. I didn't actually compete in the event because it was a little too close to my skyrunning worlds, but I just did do some training on the trails. So I'd familiarized myself with that last sort of, 20 to 30 Ks of the course as well. So it was really that middle section over Mount William that I was unfamiliar with. And everyone told me that was like the crux of it. And I think we got thrown even more excitement with the weather. That section was definitely like challenging as part of the course, but that's also where I was having a good patch and where I like came through from fourth through to second. So that part was, good for me, even though it was an experience.
Well, let's get into it, and maybe we'll break it up as maybe through to evening time. So we started at 8 a.m. at Mount Zero. So let's talk about like that first section through the Gar Trailhead, like the first 15K. Are you thinking, I got to keep these other women in sight? I'm going to run my race, my time. What's your strategy going into a race like this?
Okay, so I wanted to be able to run comfortably, not feeling out of like my comfort zone, and hopefully keep the other women in sight. Look, to be honest, I know Bridie's like quite a fast runner, so I wasn't too worried about keeping her in sight, but I did feel I should be sticking around with Lou and hopefully Manyi as well, because Manyi was in the world's race, and so I did have some familiarity of my pace relative to hers. And so I really did want to be sticking with them. I sort of had in my head that Bridie might take off, and that was okay. I wasn't going to kill myself about that. And so, yeah, I didn't want to, like, I was essentially still going to try and run my own race in that I wasn't going to, kill myself to try and keep up with them. But I thought I should be able to, be around the without trying too hard. Unfortunately, it just didn't really pan out that way. I was working harder than I would have liked, even for the first section. I also took a wrong turn. Thankfully, Sanjay had also taken the wrong turn and he was coming back the other way. And so I didn't go too far down the wrong trail. So I only lost like 2 minutes or something. But then I had to sort of play catch up to catch back up to Lou and the pack of guys that we were running with. And so, yeah, I was probably working a little harder than I wanted to, but not too crazy, to that first aid station. And then with the technical, there was a bit of ridgeline riding and then descending into the aid station there. I did manage to just come through and pass Lou and Bridie and come in. I was the first female into that first aid station just because that last few Ks had played to my strengths, really. Like I'm a bit more of a fast descender and technical and stuff. And so that's why I had not been holding that first position the whole time. It was just the way it panned out leading into that aid station.
And like you're taking the lead early, not by plan, because of descending. Are you thinking, as many people are in milers, save the quads, save the quads? Because descending is where we're starting to burn, the quads out a little bit.
Look, I felt like I was really working within my comfort zone on the descending. Like certainly didn't feel like I was pushing that. And the descents aren't long, so they're not really steep either. So no, I was more just running it at sort of an enjoyable pace across that technical terrain. So no, I wasn't thinking like I absolutely have to save these quads at that point. No, I was more thinking about keeping a lid on the effort from like a heart rate and rest rate perspective, because I just felt like I was working a little too hard for the start of a miler.
And are you the runner that uses heart rate, or are you training by RPE? Are you doing that same thing in racing?
Look, in training, I look at my heart rate. I just work on feel in races. I felt like I was working too hard. My heart rate felt too high. I was really too scared to look at it because I was like, if I look at this, it's going to just freak me out. So, yeah, I don't look at the heart rate during the races because, yeah, usually it's higher than I want it to be. It'll scare me or something.
Yeah, I I trim by heart rate, but I don't look at it, if you know what I mean. But I set up an alert on
Yeah.
my watch so that if it goes over 159, it beeps. I'm like, okay, you're no longer running easy, or you're starting to top out of zone two. And it went off once in the race, and immediately I turned off the alert. It was like, I do not need this reminder right now. I'm good. Maybe it's excitement that's making the heart rate go up a little bit. Maybe it's the caffeine. There's lots of other factors in the race. In terms of RPE, like, where are you thinking for the duration of the race that you're happy for it to go?
I haven't done a lot of work like with RPE. I mean, I'm familiar with the concept, but I don't tend to use it like myself in day-to-day training. So it's hard for me to say that. I would compare it to more like I wanted to go out a little easier than I would have started, say, a 100K race. And I felt like I was running it more like a 100K race. So I don't know where that fits into the RPE spectrum, but let's say I was running, like I thought I should be running a 6 and I was running a 7, for example. Like, I don't know exactly where, but like I felt like I'd gone out with the goal to be slower than 100K, and I found myself running like it was a 100K race, which meant working quite a bit from the start because I'm confident in the 100K distance. I know I can work a bit from the start and not blow myself up. So
Leaving that first aid station, I took on ice at the Gar trailhead, and the next section is 35 Ks. I certainly had it as my time estimate was, I think it was 3 to 4 hours I put down for that next section. It started to get hot then. How did you feel over that next section, Mount Difficult, through the Mount Difficult Road?
yeah, well, that's when the wheels fell off for me at the first time. So just straight up past the Gar waterfalls, I wasn't really feeling great, but I was hiking. That was okay. And then Lou came past, and then basically just a whole train of people. Once we crossed up onto that sort of plateau where you climb up onto that plateau before you start the actual ascent. Yeah, I just like 10, 12 people came past me. It wasn't great. I just really felt like I had no energy. And that's where I didn't really feel good at all. My heart rate felt really high. Everyone else was wandering off into the distance above me. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to have to hike this out. And yeah, I really thought I was gonna have to pull out a Hall's Gap because I was like something I said to there was a guy I was hiking with, and I do not remember his name, so sorry to him. If you remember this, I apologize. Thank you for your support and morale. There was someone who could see I was really suffering and was asking, like, if I wanted anything, if I needed, what I needed. I'm like, "I have everything I need. I just not something doesn't feel right. Like, I don't feel my usual self. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem," and I felt really, like, low on energy. So, yeah, I didn't feel hot. You said you took ice. I didn't feel like I needed ice or anything like that. I just felt like it was way harder, like, than it really should be. Than that, it was 22K into the race. Should not have felt hard. And yeah, everyone else was just streaming past me. So
What
that was
happened? What was it?
well, so it turns out I'd been sick in the week leading up. I'd had a cold. Well, I thought it was a cold. I'd been it was nothing too serious, but I'd been on the couch and in bed for like 24 hours on the like Monday, Tuesday. So my kids were also very, very sick, but they seemed to have it far worse. So when I came back, my son was very sick still, and my daughter had been sick while I was away. And so we actually did some further testing, and it turns out it was actually influenza. So I actually had the flu. So yeah, that's probably why my energy levels were not where they normally went. As soon as it started to get a tiny bit warm and I'd done 20 Ks, I just couldn't sustain like a very good pace at all. So yeah, it was I lost a bit of time there toward between Gar and Hall's Gap. It was not great. And I was behind where I wanted to be when I got to Hall's Gap. But I sort of was like I saw Lou coming out as I was coming in, and I was like, I don't want to quit, yet. Let's just like, it's not like I don't have to go far. I knew know the course for the next section. I knew I had to just go up to Rosier and down to Burra. And if I wanted to quit then, like it was like, we're still close to Hall's Gap, like not like, so I just thought, oh, I'll just keep going and see what happens.
And like, how long did this go on? We obviously know in these things that so much, like, you're gonna cycle through feeling shit and you'll have times at feeling good. Like, what were you thinking mentally whenever it was tough, and how did you come out of that?
Yeah, look, when it was tough going into Hall's Gap, I was genuinely thinking like, I'm sick. I can't run 160 Ks. Like, I'm gonna have to pull out because, just because it seems to be out of my control. But then I sort of got into a flow descending into Hall's Gap, which then I guess made my decision that I wasn't going to pull out at Hall's Gap. The descending, the heart rate had come down. I'm a good descender, and that was a nice, fun, flowy descent. So I sort of like got a little bit of mojo back with that descent. Then, of course, I had to come out of Hall's Gap and hike right back up again. But, that was the next section. So I think the descents into Hall's Gap and then the descent into Burra Huts, both of those kind of easy, runnable descents sort of gave me a little pick me up, especially when I was coming down into Burra Huts. So I've already been having another tough time over the top of Rosier. I'd been vomiting a lot. And then descending into Burra Huts, I actually overtook like maybe 3 men. And so I thought, oh, I'm like doing okay here. Like maybe I'm clawing back a bit of that time that I lost. And then as I was coming into the Burra Huts aid station, I saw Bridie leaving. So I thought, oh, I'm still within like touching distance of the women. Like they're not like, they haven't left me for dead yet. So yeah, I guess from there, I also got my poles. And so I moved more into like mountain race mode, which like I've done a lot of training with poles, a lot of hiking training. So that probably like, yeah, just gave me a different headspace, and I was able to move on strongly from Burra Huts. I got stronger.
So, with the vomiting and feeling ill, are you still able to take in calories?
I was trying to get them in. So I was taking in some, but probably like around half what I had planned. It wasn't, and I was sort of eating a bit more like sandwiches and other things to try and, change the flavor and get something in the stomach that was a bit more solid. So
But
yeah,
you
I
were being
wasn't.
sick, like, it wasn't, it was from the underlying illness rather than a nausea.
Well, it was nausea, but normally I would not expect to feel nausea at that level of exertion, and that far into the race, because I've done a lot of racing at like a higher level of exertion with the same nutrition and the same, and it, ration. Like it wasn't like I started the first time I vomited was up at gas. It was like 25K into the race. Like that's not typical. And I wasn't, you know, pushing the pace that much because it's the start of a miler. So that was when I knew something was very wrong. I was like, oh, it's not like I don't feel like myself. Normally if you have nausea, it's because you're really pushing the pace or because it's really hot or because you're like, it's later and you've been working really hard and having nutrition for a long time. Well, in my case anyway, this was a little earlier and I didn't feel like I'd done enough to warrant it.
Thinking about as the day went on, and sometimes I break these up in my head of the daytime, the evening time, the nighttime, the sunrise. Where were you when it was head torch time?
Right. So I was lucky to make it across like the worst of that really scrambly section where Tom was out there on the ridgeline with his tent. And there wasn't really much trail and you were up, down, over, under. Like it was really like hands on. I had to put the poles away. So I was lucky to make through all of that in the daylight. And then I got the head torch out sort of towards the latter part of that section. So a few K out from the Mount William aid station is when I sort of ended up with the head torch out. I can't remember exactly how many K, but like let's say I was 5K out from the 3 to 5K out from the Mount William aid station.
And so, where were you when the bad weather started to come in?
So there was some drizzle as I was approaching Mount William, but it wasn't really the bad weather. It really hit like when I summited Mount William. So we went up the road after the Mount William aid station. That's really when when I got to the top there, and then there was a sort of a descent and then climb again. Like that whole section is when I had the really the worst of the weather. That section between Mount William and Jimmy Creek is where I had the worst of the weather. So I do appreciate that people like yourself that maybe were just a little behind me were probably on the worst of the weather on that like really rock scrambly section, and that must have been even more challenging. So yeah, I was.
Yeah, whenever I was leaving, whenever I was doing that road climb, that was more like the middle of the weather. I was
Yes.
putting my head torch on coming out of Mount William car park. I didn't turn it on until I was probably halfway up that climb, but then I was up on the plateau whenever the wind and the rain was coming at you, and even if you steadied yourself on a tree, you looked at your hand or looked at your jacket and you're covered in charcoal from the from the
Yes.
burns. You were wet, cold, and dirty instantly from that section. Going into the night and the changes in temperature and kind of getting into the real guts of the race, did that affect how you were feeling, any of the nausea or any of that?
I did. The nausea did seem to subside. Like I still couldn't take in as many calories, as much nutrition as I wanted, but like I was not actually vomiting. So I was trying to get the calories in, but I just didn't want to, push the push the point. So I was sort of just sticking to that lower calories, what I could seem to tolerate, and wasn't actually vomiting. So yeah, that was really good. That and I could focus on moving on. I did have a problem with running out of water because between Burrow Huts and Mount William, I ran out of water, and I was of the opinion there was a water point, I believe, in the notes that seemed to be elusive, and I couldn't find any water. And then eventually, like, yeah, there was that one tank. So it was, yeah, I probably would have rather not run out of water on that section, but that then also meant I was getting that kept a lid on the calories I could take in because I won't take calories without any water. Like normally I have liquid the nutrition, but even if I'm having a gel, it'll be with water. So it just makes you feel awful if you have no water and you have a gel. So I probably, yeah, that reduced the calories I could get in there, and then just stuck with the low calories because it seemed to be working. I wasn't vomiting anymore. Yeah, so that was an experience across the top.
Without getting too much into the nutrition side, what was your goal? Like, were you trying to hit specific numbers? And also in the aid stations, what was your go-tos there? And I haven't asked you either about crew, so touch on some of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So, normally I'm not like a super high carb athlete. Normally I work around like 70, 75 grams of carbs per hour. So that was more like the goal. I think I ended up getting in only around 50. So, it was better than nothing, but that counted quite a bit of real food. So yeah, in the aid stations, I was having noodles and the cheese toasties. The noodles I found really great for the hot soup. I was more drinking the soup than eating the noodles, to be honest. Yeah, so that's what I was having, the noodles and the hot soup. I didn't get too cold. Like, I mean, it was cold, don't get me wrong, you were out there too, but I don't feel at any point my core temperature was compromised or anything like that. So that was good that somehow I managed to be moving at a good enough rate and wearing all my layers that I was able to make it through that, you know, very challenging environment without any sort of majorly negative effects there.
Yeah, personally, I didn't find it cold because my hands couldn't stay dry. My hands were cold, but the rest of me was all warm, and I was going to say happy. That wouldn't be the right word. It was sufficiently covered and not cold. It was the cold hands, which would have been an issue if it had a continued for section on section. But after that plateau section, there was a bit more wind. Wind was useful. Take us into like the later parts of the race, because I know from reading some of your comments, maybe it was Strava, I'm not sure where it was, but the race kind of started to go downhill a little bit for you. Where were you
Yes.
position wise prior to that happening? What was the race, the look of the race at that point?
Yeah, so coming across to the Mount William Aid station, I had managed to overtake Bridie and Lou, and I had actually come into the Mount William Aid station, and Manyi was there as well. So I'd caught up to Manyi as well, but she took off from the aid station prior to me leaving the aid station. So yeah, I had managed to gain quite a bit of ground across that really technical top section. And so that was really pleasing. That really helped with my morale a lot, like, because I had been in a bad mental space to know that I was like somehow in the race still, and I was beating my splits across that top section after being behind my splits for the whole first sort of, to Borough Heights. I was beating my splits across that top section, so much so that I missed my crew and pacer at Jimmy Creek. Like, I was too fast for them. And so I came into Jimmy Creek A session. I knew I was fast. I had sent an SMS earlier being like, I'm ahead of schedule, like, come earlier. But then the weather had closed in and it was impossible to use the phone any further. So that was like hours before. And I think they had amended the schedule, like brought it forward, an hour or whatever, but it wasn't quite enough. And so, yeah, I came into Jimmy Creek and I was like, like, I have no crew and no pacer. But thankfully, this is not the first time we've had no crew. And so I had sent a drop bag to Jimmy Creek, and I
Okay.
had put a dry rain jacket and one like little, tube of Tailwind, which is the nutrition I use. So I did have a little bit of nutrition and I did have a dry raincoat. So that was like, yeah, sort of the saving grace. I did probably spend a little longer in Jimmy Creek aid station than I would have, because I was sort of hoping they would turn up so I could have my pacer. But yeah, that they did turn up a little later, and he managed to run out and catch up with me on the next section.
Okay.
It was I did miss them, so that it didn't really, like, do my head in. I think by that stage, I was just kind of like, "Okay, well, I've missed them. We'll just keep on going. I'll catch them at, Griffin or wherever I see them next." And, yeah, so it sort of was. I think the main thing that was bothering me was had wanted to change for some dry shoes there, because we'd sort of been through the worst of the weather, and that was like 106 Ks. I thought a good time to change for some dry shoes, and I could not do that. So, and then the next aid station was uncrewed Yarram Gap, so I couldn't change for shoes there. And so, yeah, I just had to run in the wet shoes for longer, but that was okay.
Pacing or having a pacer is something totally new to me. So I didn't, also the fact that I don't know that many people in Australia. So I didn't have a pacer, didn't have crew. I just went with the drop bags. And I didn't think there was a big enough change between Mount Williams and Jimmy Creek. So I just did the Mount Williams and didn't bother the next time round. What was it like going from solo to having a pacer then for the next section or for however long that went on?
Yeah, well, it was my first time using a pacer because it's my first miler. I've never used a pacer in 100K. So it was a new experience for me. Thankfully, I have had a good friend who was willing to get up and come out in the middle of the night in the pouring rain and run with me. So that was really, really nice. He was very, very like enthusiastic and complimentary and bouncy, and it was very good for my morale, I have to say, having someone there. Also, like, I did send him in front a little bit for like when it's route finding and that type of thing, when you're not quite, you're a bit exhausted mentally, and it's easier if someone else is spotting the markers, although it wasn't too much route finding in those later sections. So yeah, then yeah, it was very good. He was amazing, James. Thank you. Appreciate your help. So yeah, he stuck with me the whole way to the finish then. So it was a decent run, around 10 hours, I think, or something like that. So a decent stint. I put up with my whinging in the last 20 Ks because it was really bad. The whinging was probably, yeah, I was suffering in the last 20 Ks. So yeah, it
Shout
was
out
nice
to
to have someone.
James. 10
Sorry?
hours pacing. Shout out to James. 10 hours pacing is a good stint.
Yeah. Yes, I had tried to find a pacer for the section prior to that over Mount William, but I just hadn't had any luck. It's a big ask. I mean, it's like an 8-hour section in the middle of the night, like, and yeah, a couple of people who turned me down, like, because they, didn't suit their training and all of that. I was like, oh, if you're very lucky because that was horrible. Like, who would have wanted to go through that weather? You're not even in the race. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you need to love it to sign up for something like that. I don't think, from what I could see around me, I don't think I've seen that many people with pacers early on. Certainly in the last, say, third of the race, saw plenty of people with pacers, and it's almost a little bit disheartening whenever you're on your own and you see someone with a pacer, because you're like, that's two people I have to pass, but it's only one position.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd never been in that really experience before. Like, I haven't been in races that have many paces. So, yeah, I was lucky that I was one of the people that did have a pacer for those last few Ks. And I'm not sure how well I would have done. At one point, my pacer did lie to me and tell me Lou was gaining on me to try and, like, give me a kick up the bum. It was, yeah, he was mostly being very helpful, and that was helpful in hindsight, but at the time, I was like, "No."
In the last part of the race, like what were the lows? Where did they hit you, and what did they feel like? And I think like having a pacer is maybe can put you in a difficult position because once you speak the negativity, it's worse than thinking it. Once you've said it to somebody, you can't take it back. Then they may then ask you, "Oh, how are your quads now?" And they keep reminding you of the pain.
I don't really find that, or at least James didn't ask me how my quads were doing. He was very complimentary. He kept being like, "Oh, you're moving well," and stuff like that. So that was, I suppose, quite helpful. And then we'd just talk about sort of some other things and yeah, different experiences, that he'd had with various races in the past and stuff like that. So yeah, I found it a good distraction. I normally run with music, but I don't run with music if I'm running with a friend. So when I first joined my pacer, I turned the music off. But then, like by the end, I was in so much the hurt locker, I had to put the music back on because I was just like, I can't listen to myself like breathing anymore.
Well, anytime I hear this on a podcast, I always wish that the host asked the question, "What were you listening to?" So, what were you listening to?
Dave asked me that on the start line. I just listened to like a quite eclectic mix of like, classic music through like the 80s and 2000s, just like, yeah, classic rock, that type of thing. Stuff that like I know the words to and, it's got a good upbeat. Yeah, so really just a playlist that I've cobbled together over years of music that,
All
I've
right,
had.
very cool. Let's start to wind it down on the race route itself. So we're coming up the end of the race. It's daylight now. You can count how many climbs there are left. What are the feelings like in the last parts of the race? Like, where are you thinking about your position in the race and your thoughts getting through to the finish?
Yeah, well, I mean, I realized once I was just getting really quite slow in that last 30 Ks that, I wasn't going to catch Man Yi. I was okay with that. I was happy with my position being like second, and I knew it was first Australian with the 100 mile championships. So I was happy enough with that given I'd had such a rough start to the day or the day before, incidentally, given I was actually just really happy with where I was. So I just wanted to get to the finish line. I threw out all like time goals and all of that. I just sort of kept trucking along, just wanted to get to the finish line, mostly to have it over and done with. I'm sure you can relate. Yeah, so I just sort of kept asking James to check, like, if there were any women coming up, like, from behind, and yeah, mostly, yeah, he was like, "No, no, you're all good, you're all good, you're all good." Just right towards the end, he started to tell me to basically try and get me moving faster. He started to tell me that that I was getting closed on and, because 'cause I'd been moving so slowly. That wasn't actually the case.
Yeah, so you finished like 50-ish minutes ahead of Lou. Was that gap coming down? Was it growing? Was it consistent?
I think it was fairly consistent for those last like, we both weren't feeling very strong for those last 20, 30 Ks. I think the gap was fairly consistent for that sort of time. Yeah, I think maybe I put the gap on initially, like, part of it over the technical across the top, and then I believe Lou had to spend a bit longer warming up at Jimmy Creek or one of the aid stations there. She had to spend a little longer warming up. So, yes, I think that might have been where the most of the gap came from.
Right. I definitely can relate whenever you say about the last 30 Ks because I felt like I was moving, I was running, but I just know that it wasn't very fast. But I was also thinking, I think everyone else has slowed down too, and how slow are they compared to me? So it was getting slower and slower, and I was definitely looking forward to the finish. When you got to the top of the last climb and you saw that little sign post at the top of the peak, Dunkeld kilometers, How did you feel at that point? And also, how annoying was that next part of the descent until after the stairs were over?
Yeah, like I had run that course before and I knew my quads were just shot. So I knew what we had to go down. So I felt pleased we'd made it to the top of the last climb, but I wasn't exactly celebrating yet. Normally I'd celebrate when I reached the top of the last climb, but I was sort of like, no, I've got to descend and these quads do not want to descend. So yeah, I knew what I had to go through.
And it was pretty tricky terrain until we got to the manufactured steps, and then we were on some single track for a bit. How did you, like, were you able to move well over that rough ground into the stairs, and then were you running on the single track?
I was moving not well at all over that rough ground or the stairs. It was very much a a very painful walk, hobble, you might say. And then once we got onto that single track, that's when I did sort of force myself to run and eventually find some semblance of a jogging flow. But it was very difficult by that stage.
How evil was the section? Like, whenever we got off the mountain and into the open field, or it's kind of like a river path, isn't it?
Yes.
How annoying was that next 4K? I was like, hold on a minute, it's up there, but we were going along here, and then we crossed over, went back to, but it was all flat. So I was chatting to Caleb Olson on the Sunday, and he said, without me mentioning it, he was like, whenever we got down to that river section, it was so nice to open up the legs and just run into the finish. It's the opposite of what I was thinking. How did you feel?
Yeah, this is when, I was being told I should run, and yeah, it was running was very hard at that point. I wasn't feeling like it was nice to open up the legs. I was feeling like I wanted to walk or crawl, and I was trying to shuffle along in something resembling a run as best I could. So yeah, it was I knew that trail, I'd run it before, so I knew how far we had to go, what we had to do, but it was not easy, and it was not fast either.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking after the race, normally, like, I like to do a hard climb or something to end a long run. Like, mentally, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, it's the end of a long run. Do the hardest climb at the very end. I think in training for GPT, it would be useful at the end of a long run to do like a flat 5K. Just like
When
build
you're
up that. I honestly think, like, at the end of GPT, I would have rather been running up a 3 or 4% incline, or down a 3 or 4% incline, than this flat track. It was the flattest section of the whole course, and one of the most challenging.
Yeah, well, I think if it had been a 3 or 4% incline, I would have been walking. So, I think there was even a slight incline at one point in there, and I did have to take a walk break. So, yeah, I'd reached the point where there was no running unless it was sort of downhill and not steep downhill, just, the kind of downhill that makes it easy, or like, yeah, really under duress on the flat. So, yeah, I did find that challenging. And I've just never had my quads be so shot before as they were at the end of that race. So I'm interested to know if that's just milers, or how much of that is related to that course specifically, or to my lack of nutrition. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, it could be a little bit of all of that. I think the course itself, the amount of stairs that you have to descend, it definitely, there's a higher tax to stepping down a step than running down an incline or decline. So I think the accumulation of that type of descending, even though the vert numbers aren't massive, they're okay. 8,000 meters is a lot of vert, but over a miler, you would think, okay, well, there's runnable sections and that, and there's climbs, and none of the climbs were difficult, and none of the descents were difficult, but there's a lot of steps. So I think
Yeah.
personally for me, it's to do with the steps.
Yeah, I mean, it's something did it, so it's a new experience. I will have to try another miler to find out, and I'm not planning to do that anytime in the near future.
Well, I mean, next November's not the near future, so did it feel good finishing the race? What were the feelings, and are you dying to go back again and do it for a second time?
it felt amazing to finish the race. Like, that was a super big achievement, and I was really happy with the result, and especially given it hadn't been going so well, it was really, really pleasing to finish. I wouldn't say finish strong, but finish. Yeah, so it was really great. Initially, I said never again. I was very much in the, like, that
That's what
was
we all
just
say.
way too hard. Time, it's only been, like, week and a half, but it's still time is ticking on, and now I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't so bad, maybe I could go back." Yeah, I'm not sure what the second half of 2026 will look like for me, but yeah, it's a great course, and maybe one day. Don't know when.
I
Maybe
don't
one
know.
day
I
I'll.
I think a good CCC could set you up nicely. Time to recover, time to get in some steps and some specificity for GPT. And based on like terrible weather, not feeling great, being down at, fairly low carb numbers as well, I think there's plenty of time there to be shaved off your
Yeah, like, I do actually agree with you, and that is how I feel about it. So, I I don't know if I'm gonna do it anytime soon, but I am sort of, I've moved from, like, never again to, I wonder, like, how much I could shave off because, yeah, I know I didn't have the greatest day, so.
Yeah, it's always a case of immediately after you rarely want to do it again. And then what is the time scale between never again to maybe to I could definitely do that better. I'm going to try that. The race that took me the longest to come full circle and that I would do that again was TDS. Every other race I've been fairly happy to, maybe I go back. But I think on GPT, after the feet aching kind of went after 3-4 days and I wasn't feeling it on every step, I was thinking, yeah, it wasn't that long to be out there and you could do it again and it was a good experience. So yeah, well, we'll not put any pressure on you, but I hope to see you back there at some point. I know I'm gonna go back and I don't know in what capacity, but it was a great environment, community. It was such a great vibe in Halls Gap, and I think Single Track put on an amazing event.
Yes, they absolutely do. They are doing great things for the sport of trail running in Australia, particularly in Victoria. So lifting the competitiveness and all of that. So that's really wonderful. And the GPT course is like no other course anywhere, I think. So it's really unique. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
I mean, a
something.
lot of people did, comment and send me messages whenever they saw the point to point line on Strava through the peaks, which kind of sit out of a plane. So it is kind of like aesthetically very, very nice looking. As we sort of wrap things up, you're a La Sportiva athlete, so everybody loves talking about gear. So please let us know what shoes were you using for the race.
Right. So I was actually using the Jackalboas. I find them really comfortable for like knowing they're not going to give me blisters for that type of thing. They're also really nice on wet rock. So given the forecast, they don't like they have more of a grip pattern than like the Prodigio Pro, which I also love for different reasons, different courses. And I know a lot of people were wearing the Prodigio Pro. Yeah, so the Jackalboas I find really great on wet rock. I wasn't slipping and sliding at all, which was really good. I didn't get any blisters. So for me, that was a big win. I did have the Prodigio Pro in one of my drop bags. I did have the Prodigio Max in another drop bag in case my feet were swelling, in case I needed more comfort, that type of thing. But I just ended up, I only did one shoe change and I had multiple pairs. So I was in the Jackalboas the whole time, just one shoe change for a fresh pair of the same shoe.
Then that's an interesting shoe choice. I was expecting to hear Prodigio Pro because I think it was the most popular shoe on course that
It
I
was.
could see.
Yes, it really was. So I have really narrow feet. I love the Prodigio Pro. I really do. It's a great shoe and I recommend it to like nearly everyone. With my narrow feet, I'm sort of between two sizes or something. I love it for shorter runs. I'm not sure I could do a miler in the Prodigio Pro. I haven't tried. So I did have them there as an option to change into, but yeah, they're just for my unique feet, the Jackalboas work really well.
Yeah, I haven't used the Jackal in a while, but I have a full selection of La Sportiva over my shoulder, and like the Jackal and the Cyclone and the Mutant and the Bushido, they all kind of come from that original kind of quiver of La Sportiva, whereas the Prodigio line is like the new school La Sportiva. So
Yes.
yeah, interesting. All right, Nicole, thanks so much for your time. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
No, just really thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on your race. We obviously talked a lot about my race. I did listen to your earlier podcast about, your race, and you were talking with Ricky. So that was great to hear. Yeah, it's great to have had you down for the GPT, and thanks for talking to me about it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great to chat.